Well, during the pre-production stage of Misfortune, we knew off the bat that we wanted to film in the horror genre. We used films like Halloween and Scream as our main source of inspiration. These two films create fear within the audience by using unexpected locations like a character's home or their neighborhood to take away their sense of security and comfort. Misfortune does this using an apartment building and then the outside of Marcos's home, and it takes away their sense of security because they don't expect the night to go horribly wrong in a place where they feel comfortable and safe in. Typically in a horror film, if a character isn't front and center, they will be airheaded or rude to the protagonist. And if it's in the slasher genre, then they're likely to be on the slasher's hit list. Horror films also typically have a female lead. Misfortune doesn't really have this. Our protagonist is Ralph. He's not a female lead, he's a male lead. Handheld is a staple for the genre. They throw an audience into the film, into the scene, by making it feel personal and realistic. The camera is jerky, there's a lot of tracking shots, there's zoom-ins, there's high tilted angles, there's close-ups. All of this is done to further the viewer's sense of, or feeling of being in the film. Misfortune does this a lot more towards the end of the short film, where we're following Marcos from behind using a tracking shot to make it feel like he is actually being followed. And then there's also a Dutch angle once he's attacked. Prior to this, during the first half of the film, Misfortune doesn't look like your typical horror film. We wanted to do this because we wanted the ending to be very dramatic. Similarly, Misfortune's characters aren't dressed like you would expect from a horror film. They're dressed very casually, they're comfortable, and there's the well-lit dining room, there's soft jazz playing in the background. That is until Marcos has to leave the dinner party, and then all the characters become very anxious, and the music changes from jazz to something very eerie, and then the driveway lighting is kept to a minimum. Misfortune is kind of like a character study around toxic friendships. We give our friends a lot of leeway on how they treat us and how they behave because we expect them to have our best interests in mind. And so we typically look past a lot of their flaws and how we feel because, well, they're our friends. None of the Misfortune casts are exactly saints. They all have their flaws and they don't exactly treat each other the best. Marcos and Ralph are the most obvious. They throw hurtful words at each other and say things that make the other uncomfortable. For Isabella, she's very critical and kind of doesn't care about her friends. As for my character, she's very distant from the group. Although she cares for her friends, just like Isabella, she can be very blunt and